I would now like to call Christopher Allen, Director of Learning and Technology from Al-Sahwa School, on stage to talk about future skills taught at schools and colleges.
Good afternoon. Masah khair. My name is Chris, and I work at Al-Sahwa School, just 10 minutes down the road. Great location right next to a beach. It's lovely to be with you here at this beautiful hotel. And I have lived in Oman now for nearly 4 years, and it's my great honor to work in education in this country, to work in developing education. I believe that's why we're here. I'm a teacher by trade, secondary school. So if you could bear with me, we like to ask people to put their hands up. So could you put your hand up, please, if you work in a school or you're representing a school? Great, thank you. Could you put your hands up if you're representing higher education, a college or a university? Put your hand up, please. Okay, so most of us are university level, working with students in higher education. So I want to talk to you today about this important topic of global citizenship. And this, I think, is a really important skill for the world we live in, 21st century skills, but also the country that we live in and the moment of history that Oman is in, global citizenship, I've come to believe is key. So this presentation is entitled Building School, University, Education Communities that Foster Global Citizenship. And as you can see already, you might recognize those 17 goals, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That is a key focus in global citizenship. So I'm going to be talking about the motivation of global citizenship, the meaning of global citizenship, the measurement of global citizenship, and the manifestation of global citizenship. What does it look like in an educational institution that produces global citizens? What does it look like in a school, in a classroom? What does it look like in a university? Now, my school is part of the International Baccalaureate. You will know of a few international schools in Oman that are international baccalaureate curriculum. The International Baccalaureate uses the phrase international mindedness. Today I'm going to use the phrase global citizenship. The phrases are quite interchangeable. In reality, they mean the same thing. Global citizenship as a phrase is mainly used by an organization called Council of International Schools, CIS, which my school and some other schools in Oman belong to. So let me tell you a bit about my journey and my interest in the topic of global citizenship. As I've already said, I'm from the UK, from a place called Brighton, who have become a better football team, so now that city is more on the map in the last 10 years. And my teaching background is in the subjects of history, philosophy, politics, and TOK, which is an IB subject, which is theory of knowledge, epistemology. Recently, I completed a master's in education and international development at UCL Institute of Education, and I chose to focus on what has really interested me since coming to Oman. It's a move with national schools incorporating international curriculum. National schools of Omani students that are becoming outward-looking to international education. Looking at this, I studied the Ministry of Education, the Oman 2040 vision, which is a really important document and vision for this country, CIS, the IB, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. And this is the question that I explored. To what extent is global citizenship key to the development of Oman's education system? So this leads me to the first part of my presentation. What is the motivation behind global citizenship? Why should you teach global citizenship and model global citizenship in your educational institution? Well, I've got 2 reasons, and the first reason is a key one. The world needs global citizens. Do you watch the news? Have you seen what's happening in our world? More than ever, I believe we need global citizens. There are increasing global challenges that are globally faced in terms of different dimensions and need global solutions. Many historians and philosophers are talking about this being a grey zone and a shift in a new period of world history, and for that reason we need to focus on global citizenship. Increasing the political postures of nationalism and isolationism in Europe, America, you could say the Western world, but actually globally this push towards nationalism is something of concern in our day and age. In 2009, Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive. In his book Drive, he talks about the difference between intrinsic motivation and external motivation. External motivation are things externally that motivate you. A bonus, maybe more money, maybe more benefits in your job. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, are things that intrinsically motivate you to do a good job. And I know part of this conference is looking at how to motivate staff. What he found in his book, in his research, is actually intrinsic motivation long-term is more powerful than external. People get to a certain wage salary and then they don't improve productivity. As long as they're stable, they've got a good income, they won't improve productivity necessarily. But what can really make a difference is intrinsic motivation. And global citizenship is an important factor, I believe, in intrinsic motivation for educationalists, teachers. Daniel Pink highlights three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is the freedom in your job to be trusted by your boss to do your job well. Mastery is the freedom, maybe as a teacher or someone working in education, to teach or lecture and master that skill. And thirdly, purpose. If you adopt global citizenship in your teaching, it will give you a dynamic purpose to your teaching. Every time you stand up in front of students, every time you're involved in working in education, you're doing something much more important than just passing exams, getting grades. You're developing global citizens that will go on to shape and change the world. The second motivation that I highlight in my research is a shift in international education, from the international to the national. Traditionally, international schools emerged through the concept of the expat. Expats emerged, you could argue, post First World War with the creation of intergovernmental organizations such as the League of Nations and organizations such as the Red Cross, which is the first NGO or international NGO in the world. If you look at this shift, you have international schools like the International School of Geneva in Switzerland, which is where the IB, International Baccalaureate, originated. And so there's a shift going on in this world history and also the type of schools that are emerging in the response to internationalism. In 1947, you get an international school in New York, post-Second World War, at the start of human rights development, United Nations being established, and a United Nations school that is focusing on internationalism. At this time, most of the students were expat kids. Their parents were diplomats. 1960s, you get a movement of UWC colleges, most important one being in Wales, Atlantic College, and that is the start of what becomes the IB program. In the 2000s, you get the start of big international schools. And in the United Arab Emirates, and it's bigger now than the United Arab Emirates, I'm sure you've heard of GEMS academies. GEMS academies educate thousands of students, and their model has been followed. So it's a shift from diplomatic kids to upper class students to middle class nationals. And so now the international education is national. It's for everybody, and therefore we need to be more intentional about how global citizenship is taught. It's not just taught in a classroom where there's all different nationalities. In a multicultural classroom, it also needs to be taught in a national classroom with a focus on internationalism. So, global citizenship, you notice I haven't actually defined the concept. And now I want to think about the meaning. What does this word mean? It is a buzzword. We like buzzwords in education, don't we? We like buzzy words and fuzzy words, and we never really get down to thinking, what does it mean, And more importantly, what does it mean in practice in the classroom and in the educational institution? So my research that I did 2 years ago, I did some questionnaires with teachers, around about 25 teachers, all teaching in Oman, many expats from different parts of the world. And I did some structured interviews with a few teachers, asking them this question: what is international mindedness? What is global citizenship? Is it important for teaching and education in Oman? Well, as you can see, all of them said, yes, it is really important. However, all of them gave me a slightly different definition. Okay, so it's really important, but there's this buzzy fuzziness about what global citizenship really means. The majority interviewed also stated that it's important to be taught in schools in Oman. And they gave, again, various different reasons why it's important to be taught. Okay, so I want you to do something for me. You've got 1 minute now to turn to the person next to you. As I said, I'm a teacher, so there's going to be some engagement with participants. Can you turn to the person on your table and think about this question? What is global citizenship? Turn to them and tell them your definition, please. You've got 1 minute. Okay, thank you. So you've had some time to talk about what global citizenship is. Maybe your neighbor gave you a definition. Maybe they gave you an example. It's probably easier to find an example. It's likely as well that you probably had different definitions. Just raise your hand, please, if your definition was different. Did you have different ideas about global citizenship? Okay, a few hands are going up. So that's a big question, isn't it? It is a big question and potentially a problem in education if we're trying to teach something or we're saying something's important, but we don't actually know what it is. Okay? So this is a definition from UNESCO. It's a good place to start. UNESCO talks about global citizenship education. Its aim to is empower learners of all ages to assume active roles, both locally and globally. I think that's really important. In building more peaceful, tolerant, inclusive, and secure societies. So my challenge for you is this: if global citizenship is important for you as an educational institution, do you have a definition? Do you have a statement defined of what it means to your school? All Council of International Schools, CIS schools, have to do that as part of the accreditation process. So we have that at our school, Al Sahwa. But it's really important that you as a community, contextually, in your location, define what global citizenship means for you, what you're aspiring to as an institution. And this part is key. It's local and global. So that leads me to my third point about measurement. How do you measure global citizenship? Now, the International Schools Student Profile, ISC, wrote a report. The title, was the International School Student Profile. And in that, they asked graduates from international schools from all around the world, did you learn about international mindedness, global citizenship? Did you learn about it in school? And if so, how was it measured? Was there any explicit assessment or measurement of what you were learning? Because in schools and in universities, we have to assess things, don't we? We like to be able to measure success. We like to have metrics. We give worth to those things that can be studied and measured. So in this report, I want you to think about this. How many students do you think said yes, percentage? How many students do you think said no? Was global citizenship knowingly measured at their school explicitly? These are some of the top international schools in the world. And the statistic was, it's an easy one to remember, because it was 0% of students. None of the students interviewed said there was explicit measurement of global citizenship, international mindedness at their school. That they realized and that they were assessed on. Now that's something for me that's quite worrying, and again, doesn't seem to make sense. If you're not defining it, if you're not measuring it, then it's not important. And it can be assessed. There are tools, and if you want, you can go away and research these more. These are tools that you can use in universities for international students, for expats, for national students as well, to assess their international mindedness, their global citizenship assessments. I don't know much about most of them, but the one that I know, because I've done it myself, is the Intercultural Development Inventory. Now, most of these assessments, psychological tests, questionnaires that you do, and then you get a result, they cost quite a lot of money. And they're only done by selected trainers. So they're not used in international schools. They're often not used in universities. So the question is about measurement. And I think one of the reasons global citizenship and international mindedness is so hard to measure is because the nature of what we're teaching, what we're modeling, is character. Okay? Teaching character. It is teaching the head, the heart, and the hands. And this is picked up in a book by David Brooks, who writes for the New York Times. And in his book, The Road to Character, he starts his book by talking about this. We have a problem of character. We focus too much on resume, CV, virtues, rather than eulogy virtues. Now, the word eulogy is to do with a funeral. And the point David Brooks makes is what is important is your character, and that's defined, he says, by what people are going to say about you after you die. What are the characteristics, the attributes they're going to say about you when that person passes on? They don't talk about CV skills at funerals, okay? They don't talk about how productive you were in terms of emailing, in terms of doing spreadsheets, but they talk about your character and those important attributes. So my question to us today is, how do you develop a character of global citizenship? Global citizenship is something that happens in a community. To be a citizen, you have to be part of the community. So I think the key thing here when we think about assessment, individual assessment of international mindedness or global citizenship skills, it is problematic because what we need to assess or measure is a community. Is an educational institution as a community, how do they grow global citizens? How are they defining it, practicing it, and assessing it, which gives them a passport as a global citizen? So this leads me to my last point about manifestation. Now, this is embedded in the IB curriculum. So as somebody who works in an IB school, global citizenship is really important. But I think wider than the IB curriculum, in other secondary school curriculums or other university institutions, you can have a national to international outward-facing look. It's all about facing your posture outwardly and mapping global citizenship in your institution. From what your subjects you teach, the curriculum, rites of passage, that's more to do with secondary schools, to do with projects, to do with partnerships, to do with student experiences and travel. Thank God that we can travel again. We can welcome people from different countries. Why not try and build links with national institutions in very different countries and build bonds and give them an insight into Oman? That is global citizenship. So it's all about age and stage appropriateness of challenge. And the last thing I want to think about is not necessarily McDonald's, but something that McDonald's has been very good at over time. And that is glocalization. Have you heard of this phrase? Glocal. The global meets the local. It's an invented English word. Glocalization. So in your education institution, again, is there a local issue that links to United Nations Sustainable Goals that has a global impact? I want to encourage you to start to think about a local issue that your university or school can have an impact on. So I've got some questions for you to finish. It's been a great pleasure to speak to you about this important topic of global citizenship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christopher Allen.